flag.
All right, good evening, everybody. Welcome to the Board of Education meeting for the Webster Grove School District. And thank you for everyone for switching to Zoom at the last minute. I know I was at physical therapy, sheltering in a bathroom. So I think this was a good option since it sounds like there's 2 more waves of storms to come. Anyway, we will get started and Dr. Simpson is going to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Has everyone had a chance to review the agenda?
Yes.
And if so, I would accept a motion to approve the agenda.
I'll motion to approve the agenda.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
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 Anyone opposed? All right. So we'll get started. The first thing we have, do we have any student advisors?
No, Gavin is unable to attend tonight.
Okay, so we will start with celebrations from the board. Who wants to get started? Alex, do you want to start? You're the person I see on the top of my screen.
Yeah, sure. I think there's quite a few things that I think we're celebrating in the last couple of weeks. But I think one of the things that came to mind, I attended the renaming of the baseball and softball field to Copland Field, named after Richard Copland, class of 1917, who was killed in the line of duty in World War I, and his wishes were to have the field named after him. That was lost when things moved around over the past 100 years, and it was recently that information was found. So I thought it was really cool. There's more about it on the district website if you care to look into it. And I think it was actually in the Webster Kirkwood Times as well last week. So really cool information, the way that we came about that, and it was a cool ceremony. So that'll pass.
All right. Tara?
Yes, thanks. I agree. There are definitely a lot of things to celebrate. I first want to celebrate the return of the Bristol Blacktop Ball and so many of our other all-school events throughout the district. It's just wonderful to have the opportunity to come together as school communities again with families. I also want to thank all of the teachers, staff, and administrators who organized Hickson's Camp Lyman. I know this was mentioned a couple of meetings ago, but our 6th graders had a great time, and the last team finally got to go the first week of May. And they just did a great job making, a fun alternative to the traditional overnight camp. And in fact, it was so much fun that my daughter told me that she would be happy to go to Camp Lyman every day for the rest of the school year. So thank you very much for that. And I'd also just like to take a moment to celebrate the school year coming to a close. I first want to congratulate all of our graduating seniors. I saw some of the walkthrough videos today, and that was just really touching and lovely. And every student in the district for working so hard this year, and hopefully having some fun too along the way. And I want to thank all of our district employees, especially our teachers and staff. As we wrap up our 3rd consecutive challenging school year, and I know this one has been particularly tough for many of our teachers, I just want our teachers to know how very valued and appreciated you are. And I want to thank you for everything you've done this year. That's it.
Awesome. Alan?
All right, I'll echo a couple of things that others have said. The Blacktop Ball being one that was a lot of fun to attend. And I've also seen that similar events have happened in other schools, like the Hudson Spring Picnic happened and things like that. So it really is nice to see some of those things coming back. Along those same lines, we held their first in-person strings concert in a couple of years. So I'd like to celebrate Des Reichhold and all of the strings teachers. They did a great job not only coaching those kids and teaching them instruments and strings through virtual, but now they got to be back together this year and actually have a concert in person to celebrate all the work they've been doing, which was fantastic. Just a couple of other small things. I've noticed several schools have had fundraisers raising money for different charities in support of everything going on in Ukraine. I know Bristol's had one, Gibbons has had one. So I just want to celebrate those kids and those teachers and that staff sort of taking the initiative and raising that money to support others that are in harm's way. That's really, really awesome to see. And finally, I just saw that the senior class had received over $35 million in scholarships for this coming year. So that's wonderful, wonderful to see. Similar to you, Tara, I saw some of those great videos of walking the halls of their elementary schools and stuff today. And that was really, really touching and wonderful to see them going back and sort of connecting with old teachers and staff that helped them all at the very start of their journey. So that was wonderful. There's also lots of other sports things and stuff, which I'm guessing John and others will cover as well. We've had quite the run of success in sports and other things. So I'll leave it at that.
Absolutely. Thanks. Christine?
Thanks, Joe. Just one thing I wanted to say about our men's golf team. Just congratulations and kudos for winning state. Like Tara mentioned, those graduation walkthroughs or graduation parades, I've seen in a few different schools. Thanks to the families, to the administrators, and of course to our students who make these traditions possible. And as several have said, it's the end of the school year. Just thanks to our educators, it's been another tough one. I know. And it's spring. And so I'm working from home a couple days a week, and it's just been a lot of fun to look across the street and see Avery teachers outside with their students and educators working with students outside. It's just always fun to watch the interactions that everybody has and the fun that they're having. And finally, I look forward to celebrating our rising high school students, our eighth grade graduation next week with a handful of my board colleagues. Thanks, Joe.
Yeah, of course. Kita?
So all of my celebrations are upcoming because I am a parent of one of those rising eighth graders, and I'm also a parent of a graduating senior. So I will probably be a blubbering mess over the next couple of days. I look forward this weekend to the senior parade. I look forward to the all-night party. I didn't get to attend, but I've seen the pictures. My daughter did participate over at Gibbons in the walkthroughs today, and I've been seeing all the pictures of their class when they were there and compared to now, and the gowns, and already starting to be a blubbering mess. Thanks to the teachers over there at Gibbons, if I can just say personally, and Nurse Mindy for taking such good care of my kids while they were there. They enjoyed coming to see you guys. Thanks to all the teachers. I'm sure all the teachers throughout the district at the high school. It's been a tough year. It's been a tough year for our students. They've gone through a pandemic. They've gone through a very divisive atmosphere. They've gone through all kinds of things, and yet they still shine, like Alan said, and got $30-something million worth of scholarships, and they're winning state golf tournaments. And I mean, they're just, if that doesn't demonstrate academic excellence, I don't know what else does. And I also want to thank the parent club at the high school for putting together all this graduation stuff. They have really worked really hard, done a lot of fundraising. They've also raised money for scholarships, and they worked really hard to put together all these fabulous things to celebrate our seniors as they get ready to take their next step in life. So that's it.
Awesome. Thanks, Kita. David?
I'd echo everything everyone said, and I'm particularly looking forward to seeing how graduation works in a new location. It's going to be exciting, and Kita, I will try to remember to bring some Kleenex with me for you.
Perfect. And I will just shout out again, to the boys golf team. That's a huge win for them and super exciting. And also, it looks like prom was very successful from all the pictures that I saw. So it's fun to see things kind of return to normal in terms of activities. And I know the seniors really appreciate that. So anyway, that's all I have. Celebrations from administration.
Kathy, do you have any different ones to share?
No, I don't have a different one tonight. Thanks.
Okay. I just wanted to, again, echo, I'm super excited about the graduation and to be in a venue, to return to where people can invite anybody that they want to a graduation. And you don't have to have a family member that could camp out or get there at 5 o'clock or something to secure a good seating. That was the impetus for the students multiple years ago that came to us. One of the big reasons. So like David, I'm excited. I'm anticipating, look forward to seeing how that goes. Huge kudos to our business students, our business department, our DECA for the Shamel Run. Another huge success, raised a bunch of money. Also wanting to acknowledge our teachers and our staff. We had that special recognition ceremony. Thank you to Sandy and all the staff that facilitated that to recognize all of our years of service as well as our retirees. And then again, thanks to my colleagues, one of the things that we did in support of recognizing our teachers for Teacher Appreciation Week, Staff Appreciation Week a few weeks ago, was to kind of raffle off, a substitute class in your teacher for a half day. And my colleagues have just had absolute blast. It's been affirming. It's been reminders about why we do the work that we do. It's been reminders about the challenge, the difficulty that it is teaching. I take my shot at it next week, working with kids at the Walter Ambrose Family Center for 4 hours. So looking forward to that. Gonna have to get a lot of rest. I'm used to I have one of those in my house, in our house, but yeah, looking forward to it. So that's it.
All right, awesome. All right, moving on to curriculum development. Dr. Adams. Oh wait,
Yeah,
sorry.
one thing, Joe, it's also
sorry.
Yeah.
Sorry, I'm messed up because I didn't have time to print it out, the agenda. Anyway, so yeah, the board policies are attached. If you have any questions, read through those. If you have questions, reach out to anybody on the policy committee, which would be Alan, myself, and Keita, I think. The correspondence log is attached. Feel free to check that out at your convenience. Board calendar. Anything?
Yeah. Nothing new, just a few more dates for the remainder of the school year.
All right, that sounds good. Okay, now we're going to move to Dr. Adams for program curriculum development.
All right, well, good evening to all of you. I'm excited to share some work that's been ongoing behind the scenes with the learning department this year. In the midst of everything else that's been going on, we have committed to creating a process and revising our curriculum cycle for the next few years. And what I hope to share with you tonight are really just some highlights related to that work. Attached to board docs, you have the overall, I think it's 20-something page document that we will be using as our foundation for this work going forward. But again, tonight I plan to share some of the highlights to hopefully give you a high-level picture or view of the work that we plan to do going forward. So in terms of board policy connections, there are 2 board policies that this relates to, this work, policy IF and policy IM. Both have to do with curriculum development and then also review, periodic review of instructional programs and non-curricular programs such as school safety, technology, et cetera. And I'll be talking about those particular areas in just a moment. Our goals going into this work were to create a consistent process that we had in place in terms of developing curriculum. So in the past, I don't want to paint a picture that we haven't had a solid process in place. We have, but over the past few years, obviously the environment, the world has changed related to research that we have, related to experiences that we have. And it was time for us to take a look at the work that we can do and that we will do related to curriculum. And so we wanted to create a consistent process that regardless of who's leading the work, so whether it's me leading the work or whether it's the math coordinator or the literacy coordinator, we are all following a consistent process as we're looking to develop curriculum. We also wanted to create a K-12 vertical alignment. So traditionally, our curriculum coordinators have focused on kindergarten through 8th grade, and high school has really dealt with the department chairs and the assistant principals in the development of the curriculum work. That will continue to be, but we've expanded our coordinators to be K-12 coordinators so that we can make sure that we have continuity across all of our grade levels. And we'll be doing a lot of work with the high school over the next few years as well. Also, we wanted to make sure that we had an opportunity to embed opportunities related to the curriculum with our stakeholders and have consistent opportunities regardless of the content area. So if it's science, if it's reading, if it's math, if it's industrial tech, making sure that our process includes opportunities to hear from our community about what is currently happening, giving us feedback related to that work, and then updating throughout the process of developing that curriculum. Also looking at our budget for the next few years. We can't do everything every time. And so by staggering this work and by creating a cycle where we are looking at particular content areas deeply, it will allow us to better budget related to that work and the professional development and the resources that we are providing related to those curriculum changes. And then in addition to that, some of the feedback that we've received in the midst of COVID and everything, some of the feedback I received coming into the district was that we had a lot of curriculum things that were happening and all happening at once. And a lot of that had to do with some outside standard changes related to DESE and et cetera. But slowing down the pace and really being intentional about the work that we're doing was something that we heard from our teachers, in particular our elementary teachers, that why are we changing the math curriculum and the writing curriculum all at the same time? And this process will allow us to develop different curriculums at different times and implement those different curriculums at different times so that our folks will be able to really focus and dive in to one particular area at a time as we are going about implementing that. And then of course, I'm thinking about that as a system as we are implementing, so that way we can continue to work toward more consistency among all of our schools and really that K-12 alignment piece. Again, high level, there are 4 phases that we have developed within our curriculum development process. The first is the evaluation of our current program. So looking at what are the current needs that we have? What does our data suggest in terms of student achievement? What's the feedback that we have from our staff? And also looking at what are current practices related to that particular content area. What does research say since the last time that we changed our writing curriculum or the last time we changed our math curriculum? And how can we make sure that we are staying on the forefront of what's happening related to our content areas? So that's phase 1. At the end of phase 1, we've built into our system, and it's not listed here, but it's within the document that you have. We would report at the end of that evaluation of the overall program back to the board. It wouldn't be something that you would have to take action on, but it would be an opportunity for us to inform you about our findings and then our plans for our next steps related to that work. Phase 2 would then be based on our feedback, based on the data, based on the research. What are the areas where we need to make changes? Those changes could be within our curriculum. Those changes could be within the assessments. So how are we measuring whether or not our students are achieving at the level that we want them to achieve within that content area? It could be reviewing the resources that we are using to teach that curriculum. It could be looking at best practices related to how we teach that curriculum. Or it could be a combination of all 4 of those areas. I want to be really clear about this. Just because it's time to look at math or just because it's time to look at science doesn't mean that we have to completely revise everything within that work. In some cases, our research and our findings may be the next decision that we have to make. But in some cases, it may be looking at just an overall tweak to the curriculum or identifying a new resource. And so it really will depend based on where we're at and based on the findings of phase one. And then phase three is then once we've identified and changed the curriculum or changed the resource, then making sure that we have a strong professional development plan in place to support our teachers with implementing the changes that we have then developed. And then finally, the fourth piece, which is something, honestly, as an educator, it's probably the most difficult to do, is once we've provided professional development, we've purchased the resources, we've changed the curriculum, monitoring and then evaluating whether or not our changes, our decisions have actually had an impact on the work with our children. And so we want it to be very intentional about including that as a phase in our process so that regardless, again, of the content area, we all are looking at the monitoring of how we are implementing the curriculum changes that we hope to make. In the overall document that I shared or that's attached to board docs, you'll see the entire scope for the next several years, but here's a sample of what it will look like. So looking at phase one, this begins next year. So according to phase one, we would be focusing on K-12 math and also K-12 counseling. Part of that has to do with our achievement data. And so looking at our math achievement data, it is lower than our literacy achievement data. And so we want it to really focus in on math. As far as counseling goes, as part of MSIP 6, which I referred to in our last board meeting, there are some pretty significant changes in terms of making sure that we have individual plans, which we already have in place, but there are some pretty significant changes related to MSIP 6 that will be included in the counseling program. And so we thought it was a really good opportunity to evaluate and be able to align some of those pieces. So for next year, math and counseling would be participating in that phase one level where we would be looking at what does research say about those areas, determining needs assessments, getting feedback, analyzing data, kind of getting a picture of our current reality related to those areas. And then the next year, 2023 and 24, you can see that math and counseling move to phase two, where we're looking at curriculum development, we're looking at maybe assessment changes, et cetera. And then at the same time, science and world languages are entering phase one. So at the beginning, it doesn't look like we've got a lot happening, but then as you begin to get down to like 25, 26, all the curriculum areas are in different places related to that work. But from a teacher's perspective, we tried to balance it out as well to where, like from an elementary teacher's perspective, they don't have 1 year of writing followed by a year of science, followed by a year of math. We tried to integrate some of the specialty areas in as well, so that way we built in some natural breaks as well. So hopefully this will garner some positive feedback from staff as we are in the process of implementing this. So we have curriculum-based programs. That's what I've just talked about, but then I alluded earlier to programs that are non-curriculum based. So looking at buildings and grounds, looking at technology, looking at health services, all of these programs that impact the work that we do with kids, but are not necessarily curriculum based. And so we wanted to make sure that we had a consistent process in place to evaluate those programs as well. And so these programs will not necessarily follow that 4-year progression. These program evaluations will happen over a period of a year. And the board is built into this process as well, where at the end of the process, beginning next year, we would report the findings and recommendations to the board related to those particular areas. But that would start off with, again, looking at our current programming. So let's take technology, for example. We would look at what is our current capacity related to technology. What are other districts doing? What does current research say? How does that align with what we are currently doing? And how can we project for the next few years to make sure that we are doing the best we can do to provide support for our students and for our community related to technology? We would then also, it was very important to us that we embedded the equity considerations into each aspect of this work. And so what that means is, rather than perhaps an afterthought or in addition to, we're looking through the lens of equity as a part of all of our evaluations. So over the next few years, we're not only looking at curriculum in terms of inclusion and equity, but we're looking at our programs and our structures as well to make sure that we are honoring all of the different perspectives and that we are considering access and considering inclusion as we're looking at non-curriculum programs as well. And then of course, we would make those recommendations for next steps. We would then share that with the leadership team. And then I'll share on our next slide kind of where that would funnel as far as a district committee and then coming to the board. So for example, next year in 22-23, title programs, which are, you'll notice when you look at the document that I attached as well, title programs are coming up every year. That's because as part of federal regulation, we have to review those annually, along with the professional development and also school climate. So those will be done annually as part of this work. But then you'll notice below that there are particular areas like technology, looking at programs that we have for students who identify as homeless, our safety program, guidance and counseling, and early childhood programs. These are all particular programs that will participate in this program evaluation next year. In the bigger document, you'll see then what happens the next year and the next year, et cetera. Once we complete the next 3 to 4 years, we then start over with the process and bring those recommendations and those particular programs back to you, and we repeat the process. So really this creates an opportunity for us to constantly review our systems and the work we are using, the systems we are using within the district to impact kids and to impact staff. As far as our next steps, I already mentioned that we've expanded our curriculum coordinators to a K-12 perspective. And so when I speak about our curriculum coordinators, we have a K-12 math coordinator, we have a K-12 literacy coordinator, and a K-12 science and social studies coordinator, along with a K-12 gifted and talented coordinator. In addition, we have several folks who do part-time coordinating work in art, PE, library, et cetera. And they've all been a part of this process of developing this work and are excited to dive into the work and to see how the plan actually looks as we're in the process of doing it. Our additional next step, there are a lot of particular specific details within the plan, and we want to make sure that we are developing consistent protocols and tools to support our coordinators and our department chairs at the high school as they're leading others through this process. And so that'll be some of our work this summer. And then also as we are piloting this program, if you will, with our math program evaluation, we'll be developing some of this work to support our math coordinator, as she is the first one to really use this program evaluation tool. And then also this summer, I will be meeting with our non-curriculum leaders who will be leading the program evaluation for technology, early childhood programs, some of the programs that I mentioned earlier, to make sure that they have the support that they need related to evaluating the programs that they lead. So I'm very excited about this work. It's been quite a bit of thinking and problem solving behind the scenes, but I'm excited to get started and excited to see hopefully the progress that we'll be able to make as a result of this. And so I would be happy to answer any questions that you all have related to this work.
Thank you, Dr. Adams. Questions from the board? I can't see anybody, so speak up.
I have one question. I was just kind of curious about the counseling part. Like, what are you guys looking at to, I guess, update or whatever you guys are going to be doing with the counseling part? I'm just kind of curious about that.
So some of that within counseling, we'll not only be looking at our counseling curriculum, so not only the counseling curriculum, but the guidance curriculum, the career education curriculum, which a lot of that is more high school, middle school, but making sure that we have a nice alignment beginning at elementary all the way through the high school, which is a requirement of MSIP 6. But then it's also looking at individual plans that students will have if they don't already, as they leave the middle school, then informing some of their choices that they can make. The idea is to create a pathway for students based on their interests, based on their talents, that they can then know what courses and what trajectory they might be interested in as they go to high school. So really helping to partner families and with students as they're thinking about careers and next steps. But the goal is to make sure that we have a consistent system in place so that it's not necessarily up to the individual you talk to or what school you're in. We want to make sure, again, that we have consistency across all of our schools related to that work, not just in counseling, but in all of the areas.
Okay, so I guess that was kind of my question. It seems like it's more along the lines of, like you said, a pathway and career choice, and that not necessarily the socio-emotional part. I mean, I know that's probably part of the curriculum, that the socio-emotional part. But
Correct.
okay.
Correct. And we'll be using the Missouri's developed a counseling guide and kind of a vision of what Missouri hopes that our counseling and guidance programs offer. And so we do quite a bit of that. But again, it's an opportunity for us to make sure that we have all of those pieces in place. And what are areas that our counselors need to continue to grow? What are their interests? And so it's really an opportunity to kind of do a 360 look at the whole program, get feedback from families, perhaps get feedback from students about the counseling program, and then use that information to inform next steps.
Awesome. Okay. Thank you.
Absolutely.
Anybody else? Questions?
Question about the timetable. So when will the curriculum actually start to be implemented in classrooms? From the time, you first start researching best practices and reviewing the existing curriculum? What's the time span there?
So within phase 2 and phase 3. So if you think about it in terms of phases related to years, phase 1 is initially year 1, and then year 2 and year 3 are phase 2 and phase 3. So within that, depending on the amount of work that has to be done, it could be years 2 or it could be year 3, depending on the behind the scenes work that needs to happen. A lot of this is already, like, for example, the social studies curriculum, that had been worked on for multiple years before it was ever implemented in classrooms. And so that's a pretty traditional way of doing it to make sure that we have all of those pieces in place. But to answer your question, Tara, year 2 and year 3 would be the main implementation.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Anybody else?
Yeah, I just wanted to say to my colleagues, just because I sit on both the calendar committees as well as the curriculum committee, I'm privileged to be able to hear from our administrators and from teachers in the calendar committee, just how much work it takes to implement these changes. And so I appreciate what you're saying, Jason, about the intentionality of this work and bringing that both consistency and intentionality in terms of slowing down the pace of change. I just appreciate the work you're doing.
I appreciate that.
Yeah, Christine, you basically took the words right out of my mouth. I was just going to say, I don't really have a question, but I'm excited about the potential for, continuous improvement of the curriculum for our kids, but also it sounds like we listened to the teachers and heard the difficulty it is to implement multiple curriculums in 1 year. So I appreciate, hopefully this takes a little bit of a burden off of their plate in a time where they could use that.
Absolutely.
Hey, I just have a quick question on, and it just more looking for high level, but the process behind the process, if you will. So, kind of how you came up and got to this process.
No, I appreciate that. So I think I'm going to kind of tell on myself. So coming into the district, this was one of my goals, which was 2 years ago. And so in the midst of everything else, it's kind of been hanging out there as something that my predecessor shared is something that we needed to do. In addition, the coordinators shared, and then hearing from our building administrators and then hearing from our teachers that this was something that they would appreciate, having a systemic look at our curriculum. So that's kind of where the request came from. And then going from there, we've been meeting throughout the year as a learning team, which is our coordinator group. So we represent the different content area folks. But then I've also shared with, I met with the department chairs at the high school, reviewed this process with them, talked with them a little bit about what this process will look like and who will be their go-to person and what that process will look like. I've shared it with our admin as well. And we've also shared with the teachers that this, our elementary and middle school teachers, that this would be coming and would be impacting their work. But our plan is also to continue to share this as, you know, it's great to have this big idea, but as we implement it, there will clearly have to be more communication, more training, more support as we go throughout the process of living this. And so this really is kind of our guide for the next few years related to our curriculum work, but it also can be something that we can tweak and we can learn from as well. And so just really looking forward to getting started.
All right, thank you.
Anybody else with questions, comments? All right. Moving on to the professional development plan. Again, Dr. Adams.
Right, it's me again. Just a moment to share my screen. All right, so on board docs, you have the entire professional development plan. I did not plan to share all of the full details of that. A lot of it is reoccurring and is more process-based in terms of how we make decisions and about our committee, et cetera. But tonight, what I wanted to do is share with you some of our higher, bigger picture topics that we'll be looking at, and then also sharing a change related to state law and board policy related to something called externships, which is another opportunity for professional development for teachers across the state of Missouri, including Webster Groves teachers. So looking at our professional learning goals, just to share these with you, we have, we'll continue to offer professional learning in terms of book studies and summer learning proposals. Summer learning proposals are opportunities where teachers can submit a request to me in terms of they would like to work on lessons in this particular unit, or they would like to review text in this particular unit, or provide support around this particular area of study at the high school. And so it's an opportunity for teachers to say, this is what I need, this is what my department, this is what my team needs, and to have an opportunity to have that support during the summer. We also will be looking at the main focus for professional development this year will be around collaborative learning teams and focusing in on data-informed decision-making. And so you've heard us talk a little bit, you've heard me talk a little bit about collaborative learning teams or professional learning communities, which are opportunities for teachers to come together, analyze student data, talk about what's best practice, how do we best support individual students, or how do we best support groups of students based on what the data is telling us. That's been crucial over the last few years. But again, over the last few years, with everything that has gone on, we be completely transparent, we lost a little bit of the momentum that we had before the pandemic. This was initially started, I believe, 2 years before the pandemic began. And so we were moving in a really good place. And then things were clearly interrupted. And then in addition to that, we've had several new building leaders, we've had new staff. And so I don't want to say, and the message is not that we're restarting it, but we're recalibrating and making sure that we're getting everyone back on the same page related to this work. And not only that, but then taking it to the next level as far as making sure that we have systems in place to support all of our kids. And I want to make a connection between this work and the late start piece with the calendar. That late start time is where these meetings will occur. And so it's an opportunity for us to not only learn about these practices, but also continue to implement them. And that will be K-12. We've also been looking at Walter Ambrose and collaborating with them, and they're very interested in using some of their data practices and in alignment with some of the work that we're doing at the elementary school. And we're looking forward to creating better alignment between what's happening in terms of problem solving around individual students, et cetera. And we can learn both ways between what's happening at Ambrose and what's happening at the elementary schools. So I'm excited about that. We'll also be continuing our work with diversity, equity, and inclusion. Dr. Williamson, I believe at our next board meeting, as part of the equity report, we'll be talking about a professional learning progression that we've created for staff who are new to the district. Over the next few years, we'll be implementing that in terms of really looking at what are practices and how do we support all of our kids in the classroom. And also how do we continue to develop ourselves related to those issues as well. So that will be something that will be ongoing. In addition to that, we will be looking and supporting individual groups of teachers, i.e. our reading specialists. There's a lot of new research out there, a lot of new information out there in terms of reading practices and some changes that are happening in terms of legislation and some guidance from DESE. And so we have some teams of teachers, reading specialists that will be participating in some work this summer with the idea that they'll be able to be trainers and bring that work back to the district as well. And a lot of that will focus on phonics work. We'll also be continuing to focus in on numeracy. We have some folks who will be participating in some of that work, in particular our math interventionist, who will be continuing some work that they started this year related to best practices with that. And then of course, continuing to focus in on how do we best support not only the academic needs of our kids, but how do we continue to support social emotional learning and support the whole child as we continue to think about the academic piece as well. So those are our big picture goals as a district. Again, this next slide kind of shows I like to call it 3 buckets in terms of professional development. So the first bucket, if you will, is district-wide professional development. So it's a focus of everybody in the district, which would be our CLTs and our professional learning communities. Building professional development. So every building has their own unique personality and their own unique goals related to what's best for their building. And so honoring what that can look like as well. And then we also want to make sure that we support individual teachers and passion areas or individual growth. And so that's the third bucket. And again, I mentioned summer learning proposals. That's one avenue. We also provide PD grants through the professional development committee that teachers can request, and then we determine recipients based on that. We also have action research grants that teachers can participate in. And then D is our externship proposal, which is new for us this year. And in the overall guide that I shared with you all, there's a more specific process related to externships. But I want to give you kind of a high level picture of what that will look like. So typically when we talk about professional development, we think of like a workshop that teachers or principals can go to. There's a presenter, there's someone sharing information, they sit in that session all day. Externships are about learning from experience. And so I've given a couple of examples. Let's say a chemistry teacher, instead of going to a workshop, they end up partnering with a lab at Washington University, where they can experience firsthand what that experience looks like and then bring that information back to their class. Or a 4th grade teacher partnering with the St. Louis Arch to incorporate some of their special programming into the work that they can do within their social studies curriculum. Or again, a fine arts teacher partnering with a symphony, et cetera. It's experience that can then lead to learning. And so essentially what the state of Missouri has done is, instead of saying, well, yeah, you can go and have those experiences on your own, that's great. Now we're going to allow that to qualify as professional learning as long as it meets the criteria of what an externship is. And so within that document, you'll see what our criteria is and what the process is that we will use to grant credit and support related to externships for teachers. So I'm really excited about the opportunity. I'm someone that learns by doing and not necessarily sitting and listening all of the time. And so it's a great opportunity, I think, for some of our folks who are in kind of specialty areas or who don't have a traditional classroom setting to enhance their experience and to enhance their profession in terms of the work that they do with kids. So I'm really excited about the opportunity, and we'll see kind of how it goes next year, and we can always tweak and adjust from there. But I'm excited to be able to bring this opportunity to our staff. And with that, I'll take any questions about our professional development plan for this year.
Questions, anybody?
This is more just a comment, but Jason, I just wanted for my colleagues, I wanted to sort of connect this externship piece back to a couple of the policies that are in for first read today, sort of that where we adjusted some of the policies to recognize these hours that they spend towards their, their master's plus 30, whatever, wherever they are on their scale and their plus hours. So you'll see the connection all the way through to the policy level there as well.
Thanks, Alan. Any other questions?
I just had a comment as well. I'm excited to see what comes from the externships myself. I mean, it sounds like a great opportunity. It's kind of the professional staff Chelsea Center.
No, that's exactly what it
So,
is. When we talk
yeah.
about experiential learning, it's experiential learning for teachers. I mean, that's really what it is.
I think that's awesome. That's all I wanted to say. Thanks.
Any other questions?
No, I guess I'll just make a comment too, kind of in that same vein. I mean, as a professional, I work at I work at Purina, and they preach experiential learning probably to a greater degree than other types of learning, if you will, just because of how much more you can soak it up and actually learn by doing. Not to say that, reading and actually attending classes isn't useful. It absolutely is. But I think just there's a lot of research and analysis out there that points to experiential learning and the benefits of it. So it's exciting to be able to offer that to our teachers. So thanks to the policy group. Thanks to you, Dr. Adams, and everyone else that's helped with this.
Thanks, Alex. I have one question. So when it comes to the externships, is that something the teachers will have to find on their own, or what's that process look like?
So really, it is something that would start off with interest. What I would hope is that, kind of like the Chelsea Center, as years go by, of contacts, of opportunities that exist within the community. But it's going to take a little bit of time to build some of those resources. But I'm excited about the opportunity to kind of problem solve with folks who are interested and see what options are out there. When I was coming up with this presentation, just looking at, thinking about the Arch and thinking about the Symphony and all of these cool experiences that we have within the region and who might benefit from these different opportunities. So to answer your question, Joe, yeah, it's going to kind of start grassroots, and we're going to have to kind of figure some of those pieces out. But hopefully over the next few years, as people are participating, we'll be able to kind of create a bank, if you will, of different options and different experiences that folks can participate in.
Awesome.
I'll just add really quick, that sounds like a great opportunity for some of our community members to interact. And it sounds like that could really build into something really great there. So just throw that in there.
Appreciate that.
Christine, did you have a question? I feel like I cut you off.
I did not.
Okay. Anybody else?
This does require board approval. The plan does.
Okay.
Thank you, John.
I will entertain a motion. Set up.
I will make.
Go ahead. Sorry.
I'll make a motion to approve the 2022-2023 professional development plan for the Webster Grove School District.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
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 Anyone opposed? All right. Moving on. District assessment plan with, again, Dr. Adams and Mr. Brown.
Okay, I'm going to share my screen real quick. Okay, well, thank you all for this opportunity to come speak with you. Similar kind of Jason on board docs, you'll be able to see the district academic assessment plan. And my real goal tonight is to showcase some of the changes to that plan, There's been very little actual changes except for like dates of when our new upcoming assessments will be. But I did want to showcase a few little changes. Hopefully you can see this. One is our upcoming kindergarten observation form, or what we are now required to do for a kindergarten readiness assessment. So with the rollout of MSIP 6, there's been some changes and requirements of kindergarten readiness. What we did per DESE's recommendation was they showcase different platforms that they we're looking for districts to utilize. So as a district, we researched different platforms and then met with a large group of kindergarten teachers and elementary admins, and then came down to the conclusion that the kindergarten observation form, or what they call the KOF, was best suited for our teachers as well as for the assessment. So what we will have to do with MSIP 6 through DESE, the reporting changes. We do have to identify kindergarten readiness, physical well-being and motor development, social and emotional development, cognition and general knowledge development, approaches toward learning, and language and literacy development. The KOF assignment, or kind of observation form, it's a 20-item assessment completed by kindergarten teachers using really direct assessment for 6 items, and the rest are observation techniques for those remaining 14. The assessment needs to be completed within the first 4 to 6 weeks of school, and it takes about 10 to 15 minutes to complete. The second big change is one that we have added in the past, but we never had a student actually attempt to receive the seal of biliteracy. So this year we did have one. We added it back in, and then after talking with the World Languages Department Chair, they are really looking to kind of start encouraging this and pushing this out a little bit more. The assessment's called the STAMP 4S. It's a language proficiency test in reading, writing, listening, and speaking. What is it? It's completely computer-based. The students will read into, or speak rather, into the computer. There's a writing portion that's done directly with the language that they're taking, listening, and a reading assessment. For students to receive the seal of biliteracy, the district has set up requirements or expectations, as well as DESE. And this year we are hopeful. I'm just waiting on one last score to come in to maybe have our first seal award, which I'll hopefully know tomorrow. So,
hey, the question is there any anything come along with this, I guess, scholarships or anything?
Yes. So that's a great question. So with this, on your transcripts, you either will get the Missouri Seal of Biliteracy or the Distinguished Seal of Biliteracy, and that equates to 12 college credit hours, depending on the university or the state. So a lot of the universities in Missouri will take this seal of biliteracy from Missouri, but it equates to 12 hours. And then thinking of a student's minor, it's very close to a student already receiving a minor in a language. So after meeting with the World Language Department, they are really now thinking of this as a larger opportunity. I think might have been in 2018-19 was the year that Webster kind of joined in with this whole program, but we hadn't had a student that was seeking that seal up until very recently. So
yeah, it's a huge opportunity for a student who's interested.
Awesome. Thank you.
Welcome. And then kind of lastly, I did want to showcase the assessment webpage, not sure if anybody has ever really looked at it, but the district assessment webpage currently, we've got our district assessment plan, and then after tonight's board meeting, I'll update that with next year's. We do have grade level assessment calendars for K-5, 6 through 8, 9 through 12, with all of the dates of all of the assessments that we give, as well as report card timelines. So I'm just going to showcase this real quick. Now, this is all based off of last school year, but it will be updated through the information that's in the plan. But one of the bigger changes that I've been working on that's actually not visible yet is something that looks like this. And very similar, we're already on a completely different page, but over here, you now see this assessment data, and you see a whole bunch more categories. What I did want to do is with our overall assessment, I wanted to give some information just to give a global view of where we are. So I placed some demographic data, ACT data, proportional attendance, free reduced lunch, 4-year graduation rate. And then below this, I added in some MAP and EOC historical data. And clicking on any of these will take you directly to that page or that subject area. With all of these, I use PictoChart where we can hover over, and then you'll be able to see the data popping out. And then if I go over here, you'll see, for example, Webster, you'll see the Missouri State. You will see throughout, if it's a COVID exemption, a field test year is years where standards changed. We gave a new assessment, but we don't get any data back. And then you might see, for example, insufficient data, and that's when our sample size of our students tested was too small. And if they published the data, it would be, I'm trying to think of the right word, but it'd be easier to find out which demographic or which area was actually showcased in that data. And then underneath this, you'll see DESE's district dashboard. This is a direct link where you can see pretty much majority of this information, but in a completely different format. And then I did want to highlight this over here just to give a little sense of how assessments changed over the years. So in 2015, that was really the first year that we did the online map. And then in 2017, we had completely newly developed standards for MAP and EOC assessments. In 2018, we had no science data because it was a field test year. In 2019, we have no social studies data because it was a field test year. In 2020, we don't have any data because it was a COVID exemption year. 2021, districts have data, but based on DESE and overall explanations, they really encourage you not to use the data for any accountability. Shouldn't be used to make any large-scale educational decisions for any districts. And then this school year is a baseline calculation year for all districts based on performance only. And they are recommending not to compare this year with last year's data. This year's data should more closely resemble 2019. And then in 2025, it's going to be a completely different new operational test. But I did just want you to be able to see the amount of changes that have happened over the years. And then I do want to open just one of these so that you can get kind of a sense of what this looks like. But for example, in ELA, what I did was I took district overall, and then I did district comparison with the state of Missouri. And then I did break it down by each grade level just so that you could see kind of where we are in comparison with the overall state. I included English, high school EOCs into this comparison. And then once again, on the bottom, I included this exact same statement. And then this is a hyperlink that takes you straight to really DESE's educational dashboard, where you can then dive in deeper to any data that you're looking for.
Tim, can I jump in for just a moment?
Yes.
So I just want to share with the board. So all of this information has been shared with you in previous learning reports over the years. It's just an opportunity to kind of create a historical perspective for our community and as a resource to hopefully provide more information and more transparency for the community in terms of our assessments, what we use them for, but then also the data that we receive. And I'm really, really pleased with all of the work that Tim has done to create this. A lot of behind the scenes work, a lot of time, and I really want to give him a shout out as well.
Thank you. Do you have any questions?
Question, how do you, I know this page is not live yet, correct? What you're showing us. From the district homepage, where would you go to get to this page?
I'll actually show you that right now. So if I go to the homepage, what I actually did, because I wasn't sure if people would know where to find assessment. Originally, it was built in curriculum. So if you go to curriculum, you'll see assessment here. But then it's also more of its own department. So if you go to departments too, you'll be able to see assessment here. And that takes you to this overall landing page. But once again, you over here do not see all those drop downs. After discussing tonight, my hope is to add that in tomorrow.
Great, thank you. It's really great information and it's visually very easy to understand. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Yeah, my real goal was just to give a global picture, just knowing that all of that information has been presented, but it's also all there by clicking that Missouri dashboard that you can go in so much deeper to look at the data. But I just wanted people to have just an overall global look. So.
Yeah, Tim, I just wanted to say thank you as well. Like, this is good for those of us on the board that have seen their learning reports, those sorts of things. This is even more helpful because it narrows it down, but just for the community to be able to have a place to go to sort of see and compare and get all the context is fantastic. So thank you for all your work putting this together.
Yeah. Okay. Alan took the words out of my mouth, but I will say thank you again. Thanks for all your hard work you put into that. That's awesome.
Thank you. The nice thing kind of with this is all I have to do is add the new year and it just continues with the data. So it's not rebuilding. Once I figured out how to build it, it's just adding on 2022 and then 2023 and then making any minor changes or larger changes that people see fit.
Until it all changes in 2025 and you have to rebuild it.
Then it's all gone.
Any other questions? All right, well, again, that's amazing and really nice to have that information out there to hopefully stop some of the misinformation that seems to make its way around. So, and it looks like we need.
Yes, we do need approval of the assessment.
So I will entertain a motion to approve the 2022-23 district assessment plan for the Webster Grove School District.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
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 Anyone opposed? All right. Thank you. Now we are to Dr. Wiley Skinner for the new evaluation instrument.
Hello, everyone. How are you? Hope everyone's well. Can you guys see my presentation, staff evaluation? Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, great. I am going to start from the beginning. Well, thank you again for this opportunity. We are actually kind of in a place where we are excited to bring this to you. And I'm going to say we because I cannot take credit for this. The PBTE or Professional Based Teacher Evaluation Committee has worked feverishly on this, and you'll see that in the upcoming slides. And so we are excited about what this opportunity brings for us as a district. And again, trying to be very intentional about how we roll this out, but we are very grateful and hopeful that this tool will provide our teachers with the additional feedback, time, and space with their administrators to grow and learn. The topics that I want to discuss tonight, we're going to talk about the committee just to provide their context, and then we'll roll through the evaluation background and then why, and then our final recommendations, and then of course questions at the end. So for your knowledge, we do have a PBTE committee. Again, that's a performance-based teacher evaluation committee. And this committee has one representative per school. Some schools like Hickson High School, because of their size, they have more than one representative there. And so we work to consider the evaluation tool each year. We process through if teachers are feeling good about the tool, where they are, if they feel like the process is working. And so you'll see some of the topics that we've discussed over the years, and these are really heavy topics. This is not something that we were feeling like we could do in a day. We were already committed to eye observation. We were working through that. While it wasn't the best tool because of its rigidity and you can't add to, and its inflexibility, it just wasn't meeting the needs of all of our teachers. The staff, the committee really wanted to be intentional about how we were approaching this, because they felt like this tool, eye observation, wasn't meeting their needs. However, we didn't want to overwhelm teachers with another thing to do. And so because of those questions and because of their processing, just to give you knowledge, again, the teachers were also looking at the process. So we have, for your knowledge as a board, we have two different groups of evaluation processes. One is for probationary and one is for one is for tenured. And so probationary teachers, of course, when you think them, they are teachers in years 1 through 5. Tenured teachers are tenured day 1 of their 6th year. So after the completion of their 5th year, they become tenure. And so those two different groups have different evaluation structures, so overall structures that we function in. However, both groups, along with being evaluated each year, both groups have to complete a student learning objective, or what they call a SLO or SLO. And then they also have to complete a growth plan. And the growth plan will always address what I, as an individual teacher, would like to grow and learn in. What are my target areas that I believe that I should be considering and processing? So overall, we use eye observation as a tool to do the observation of the teacher, to evaluate them and to score them, but also to make sure we have the SLO, which is mandated by DESE, and then also have the growth plans, which are also mandated by DESE. And so we have two different structures that meet that need. So just for background, and I know there's a lot on here, but I wanted to give you guys context of how long we've just kind of been walking through this process. The committee as a whole discussed concerns with eye observation, and those are listed there. These were not new concerns. These were concerns that the committee was trying to process and problem solve within the tool. And so as we started thinking about that, then Marzano and his team actually came up with a newer version, kind of a more condensed version. So the initial version that they had 60 plus elements that the teachers were to be evaluated on in a year. And that's just really, 60 plus elements, just really not feasible in a 9-month span of time to really provide adequate feedback. And so what we found was the newer version kind of condensed it. And then it really made the observation tool focus on what the students were doing versus what the teacher was doing. So the goals went to, how were the students responding to the instruction? How is the teacher responding to how the children are responding to instruction? And so it really went to more of a student-led evaluative tool, which is why they, again, condensed it. So we learned of that during the 17-18 school year. And shortly after that, we decided, okay, this is the committee. This is what we've learned. Let's discuss this, and let's potentially put this out here for our staff. So during the 18-19 school year, we rolled out the newer shortened version, of which teachers appreciated. It was, again, shortened, a little bit more concise. And so we have been utilizing the newer version of Marzano since the 18-19 school year. And so what the committee thought was, maybe this could have our kind of our in-between. Maybe eye observation is not so bad. Let's work this out. Let's see if this is meeting the need. And really, it just did not. The change just was not sufficient. For example, there's one teacher evaluation tool, and then there's one non-classroom teacher evaluation tool. And that teacher evaluation tool really doesn't speak to the true essence of what a librarian does, or what a PE health teacher does. There's some similarities with the gen ed teacher, but it's really not the same. And so what specialists were concerned with was we were being observed on things that really wasn't our full job. It did not incorporate or encompass all of the pieces that what our role entails. It just didn't. And so what we then determined during the 2021 school year was, let's start looking at some tools. Let's just see what's out here. Let's process it for the year. There's no point in rushing this. And so we did look at some tools over the year. Different people came in and presented over those tools. And so what we found was there were more options out there that provided more flexibility. Two of the ones that kind of stood out for us were Standard for Success and then KickUp. And both of these are teacher-based tools that districts use, not just in the state of Missouri, but around the country. And so we actually, during the 21-22, this school year, we actually had teachers and administrators piloting both tools just to see, right? Like, let's see what this feels like. You can show me a demo, but what does this actually look like when you're evaluating a teacher? And so what we found was with these two tools, that Standard for Success actually met the need a little bit better. Customer service was great. We can customize tools as we see fit. There is a tool specific to librarians. There is a tool specific to counselors. There is a tool specific to some of the other employee groups that we have. And the nice part about it, again, is that we can create and develop and maintain and modify these structures as we see fit. So that rigidity that's in our current tool, iObservation, goes away. And we can really customize, as long as it's in line with Missouri standards, we can really customize tools to really be beneficial to teachers. So the feedback they're receiving each year is actually beneficial. What we also found, which we weren't expecting to see, was that this tool could also be used for administrators, assistant superintendents, principals, directors, as well as our support staff, secretaries, admin assistants, custodians. This tool had a bank, or has a bank, of various evaluative tools embedded in the system, which was great. We weren't expecting that, but this is a wonderful byproduct. And so my brain began to think, like, what if we could have one observation tool that houses all of our summative, informative evaluations? And this tool actually is able to do that for us. So again, why Standards for Success? I'm not going to read all of that to you, but I think, what I'm hoping to express to you is that, it does provide a diverse evaluation process and evaluation tool. We can build it and customize it however we see fit. And again, the specialists will definitely have evaluation tools that really speak to their roles, which will really be more beneficial. And it is definitively in compliance with what we have to do with, as far as the state and DESE is concerned. So again, a lot on this page, and I apologize for that, but really wanted to give you the breadth of the committee recommendations. So overall, for this upcoming school year, again, trying to be intentional and not dump things on teachers, we have asked the principals to work or develop cohorts of teachers that would be willing to further learn about this tool for the 22-23 school year. Principals went back, met with their staff, and we've had teachers who volunteered to sign up to be a part of a cohort, again, to really utilize the tool, give us feedback. What standards do we need to tweak? What needs to change? So we're going to spend 22-23 really looking at the tool and making edits so that hopefully we can roll it out in 23-24 and it'll really fit all of our employee groups. In addition, we're going to provide those staff who are a part of those cohorts, we're going to provide them with opportunities throughout the year to give us that feedback, scheduled feedback, so that we can know where we need to modify or change to make those edits for the upcoming year. For administrators, we're actually going to try to utilize this evaluative tool for this upcoming year. For your knowledge, administrators and support staff, their evaluations are still on paper. And so we are printing paper and emailing it, and they have to print it and get it to us. And it's kind of a cumbersome process. And so both tools, I met with the support staff, the different support staff groups. We're developing their evaluations and getting those embedded into the system. So the hope is that administrators will be utilizing this tool for the cohorts, for themselves as an evaluative tool, and then also for their support staff. So that by the time we roll it out for teachers in 23-24, the administrators will be well versed. We'll have a good number of staff. I think about 100 staff members have signed up, signed up to be a part of the cohort throughout the year. And so we'll have a good number of staff who've been kind of working with it and can provide us with support as we continue to try to train people for the upcoming year. So our hope is the committee's recommendation would be to provide standards for success, again, for cohorts of teachers to be rolled out as the evaluative tool for administrators, and then also for the entire support staff group for this 22-23 school year. And then all teachers hopefully will utilize it, certified teachers will utilize it for the 23-24 school year, as long as we're still getting good feedback from the tool from the cohorts that we have this year. So I know I said a lot. I'm going to stop here. Are there any questions or wonderings about anything that I've shared?
I have one question, Sandy, and my apologies. I probably should have given you a heads up before this because you may not know off the top of your head, but do you know how the price of this compares to the price of the other tool?
Yes, actually, it's, let me go back into the, just in case. It actually is very commensurate. So right now for eye observation, we pay about $11,000 a year for the tool. This tool will run us about $12,000, but that's because we've added support staff. So it's very commensurate, very cost efficient. In your board docs, there is a cost in there right now. I think it's like $5,400 or something like that. And that's for the administrators to cohort of teachers and the support staff. So once we add the other piece, we'll be sitting at about $11,000, $12,000, which is commensurate. So that was another thing too. We did not want to add anything to the budget, and the pricing actually works out great.
That's great news.
Mm-hmm. Any other questions?
Sandy, the agreement that is in our board package, is that the agreement that we are working with?
Yes, so what you'll see is the agreement for us to utilize it for the administrators and support staff. And then at the last page or the last couple of pages, you'll see the cost, the actual cost estimate for the year. So that's this page here, that's $5,400. I think it's the last page, but the agreement that's in there is the one for us to utilize it for this upcoming year. Did I answer that question?
Well, yeah, my question actually related not to the money, but the fact that, and I'm not a lawyer, obviously, but in a miscellaneous paragraph, it mentions that this is construed under the laws of the state of Indiana. And I'm curious if that's because that's where the company operates out of, or should that be Missouri?
It is where the company operates out of, and Doug did express that when we were processing back and forth about it. And he's like, Sandy, truthfully, if we need to, they'll work. It's not something that we can end a deal over, right? Like if there is a concern, we can exit out of the deal. It's not binding for 10 years or anything like that. So he did lift that as a wondering, but it wasn't a deal breaker for the agreement. But thank you for pointing that out. It does say that. Mm-hmm.
Thanks, Sandy.
Mm-hmm.
Any other questions? All right.
If not, I would ask for a recommendation for approval to approve that contract and agreement for the evaluation tool.
So I will entertain a motion to approve the contract with Standard for Success for the purpose of teacher support staff at administrator evaluations.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? All right.
Thank you.
And it looks like you're still on board, Dr. Wiley Skinner, with Adventure Club salaries.
Yes, and I don't have a presentation for this, but definitely wanted to share the update. We did meet with the Adventure Club leadership team. And then we also met separately with Lauren, Autumn, and just kind of talk through Lauren, Autumn, and Julia to talk through the different positions. So what you have in there is a draft of a salary structure for Adventure Club. We are looking at this, just for your knowledge, very heavily, knowing that we needed to shift some of the positions, and it's in addition to hire some additional people, because at some of the buildings, our Adventure Club enrollment numbers have increased. to kind of where they were or near to where they were pre-COVID, which is exciting news. But it does mean that we definitely have to work on staffing. So we did do some comparisons in other districts and found that these numbers were fiscally appropriate for what our other St. Louis County districts were paying. It does place them at the 3% above county median or above that, which is what we typically go for. And so my ask would be for you guys to approve this. Also want to make sure that you note that we will also potentially be hiring aides for Adventure Club, as well as what we call clinic aides, because we do have some students who may have additional needs that our site assistants cannot assist in, i.e. diapering and or feeding tubes, that are participating in Adventure Club. And in those instances, we would want a medical professional with those children for that time that they were in Adventure Club. We didn't include them there because those positions are listed on our support staff agreement that we've already approved. But just wanted to let you know for your knowledge, some programs may have aides as well as clinic aides to support some kids during Adventure Club hours.
All right, thank you.
Mhm.
Questions on this?
I have a question. I don't know if Pam Frazier is here, but if so, I was wondering, Sandy, if Pam has taken a look at this, if she approves of this and agrees that this is something we can handle as a district.
Yeah, she's jumping on. She's been a part of those meetings. Her and I met in-depthly this week. And Pam, you can speak for yourself, sorry.
Yes, yeah, thanks for asking. Yes, we did work together on that and I do approve also.
Thank you.
So Pam, are we developing a model similar to the one we use for other staff then? Or are we just,
Yes,
how's that?
Adventure Club is a little tricky just because there are not a lot of comps for them, but we do look and try to get a median salary for them. We just don't have a lot of comparables in those groups.
Okay, thank you very much.
Just out of curiosity, is there not a lot of difference in the responsibilities for the site leader and the site assistant?
Yeah, so think of your site leader as kind of like an assistant manager. They will assist potentially with scheduling. They will make sure that, they have the appropriate staffing in certain places. Think of them in that capacity. Your site assistant is more along the lines just dealing directly with the children. So they will have 12 kids assigned. I think they're going to a model of 2 staff, 2 to 20, a 2 to 24 ratio. So they'll be directly with kids while your leaders are kind of managing it because we'll have 3 site managers, so there won't be a manager at each location. So your leader is kind of like that assistant manager, making sure everything is matriculating well.
Okay.
Mhm.
All right. And so there is a motion to approve this. If there's no more questions.
I'll make a motion to approve the attached Adventure Club salary structure. I guess the Adventure Club salary structure for the 2022-2023 school year.
Second.
Thank you. All those in favor say aye.
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 Anyone opposed? All right. And now we have Dr. Riley Skinner and Ms. Frazier for the nurse salary structure.
Yes, and so we met again with the nurses this year, and I just want to say, and I know you guys have said this before, but our nurses have been invaluable this year in dealing with everything, working the weekends to assist with contact tracing, being available at night. I'm texting nurses at night and over the weekends and supporting families to get through some of this. Hopefully we won't have to have these COVID conversations, knock on wood, but I just want to say they have really been invaluable. Everybody has, but I just wanted to mention that for them. We did meet with them and they did have a couple of requests. One of their major requests is our current structure is we did not have like a channel change process for our nurses. So we do have that for teachers, but for our nurse, if we hired you as an RN, but then you acquired your BSN, there was no modification in salary for that. Then you just had it. And so nurses advocated for that, and rightfully so. And so what we are recommending today is that we are able to provide a nurse, should he or she or they determine that they would like to, or they have an MSN or a BSN, that we would honor their salary by moving them to that pay grade or that group, so that they can be compensated for earning that degree, that additional degree. That's one of the pieces that they wanted. The other piece is they really wanted us to process and look into national certification. So as you all are aware, we have National Teacher Board certification that we afford to our teachers and counselors. They receive an additional $3,000 stipend for that annually, but we didn't have anything in place for the nurses. And so we had some conversations, but we're going to spend next year really walking down the path and trying to develop a process, because we do have a couple of nurses that are interested in being nationally certified, which is awesome. And so we're trying to figure out what that process would look like and develop a system and structure. So our hope is that maybe we'll be having a conversation about that this time next year, to afford nurses that same opportunity, that if they become nationally certified, then there would be some form of a compensation package to accompany that. So those were pretty much their two main pieces that we talked through with them. They didn't have any other concerns or wonderings. And so what we are offering tonight is the ability to approve the nurses' salary structure for next year, and also the opportunity to pay them should they receive additional education, a bachelor's or MSN. Excuse me, if they receive that, then we are able to effectively compensate them for that. Pam was a part of those, has been a part of all of those conversations, and ran those numbers and processes with through the business office. Any questions?
Just have one clarification. I think I heard you correctly, but so if we pass this and a nurse has been hired at a BSN and they've gotten their MSN since, it will go into effect for them and they will get that raise for next school year, right?
Absolutely, yes.
And then the certification, Sandy, is that school nurse certification?
It's actually like a national board type certification. So they will be nationally certified. So all of our nurses currently right now have their nursing license, right, through nurses. So all of that, they're all unencumbered. All of their sort of licenses are good. This would kind of give them a national certification in being a nurse.
So it's not specific to school nursing, though.
No. And that's one of the things we wanted to look into, like how to, what type of learning is it? Does it branch into different types of nursing? Does it branch into infectious disease? Like what types of learnings could they develop? And to make sure that we're appropriately considering the different areas and we can accommodate them salary-wise if needed.
Absolutely. Because I think sometimes we lose sight of the fact that if you're a school nurse, you could see anything at any time and it's all you. You don't have any backup like most, if you were working in a typical nursing setting. So
yes,
definitely a job we need to appreciate.
Yeah, they are the experts. They are the only expert in that building. Yeah.
Exactly. It's a lot of pressure.
Mm-hmm.
Any other questions? And I'm assuming these salaries are competitive with
yes. Yes, we did. We ran the comps just like we did for the support staff, and they are all at minimum 3% above county median. Pam, I don't know if you want to share anything else.
Nope, I think that covers it.
Okay. So again, we need a motion to approve the nurse's salary structure for the 2022-2023 school year.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
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 Anyone opposed? So obviously we're not having in-person public comments tonight, unfortunately, but there are written public comments. So just be aware of those. And moving into the consent agenda. Can we get a motion to approve the consent agenda?
I will make a motion to approve consent agenda items 5.02, 5.03, 5.04, 5.05, 5.06, 5.07, 5.08 and 5.09.
Second.
Second.
Right, all those in favor, say aye.
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 Anyone opposed? All right, and at this point, I will entertain a motion to recess into executive session.
Make a motion to move into executive session for the purpose of discussing student matter and legal matters.
Second.
And this should be a roll call vote. Do we have
Yes.
Sharon? Okay.
Ms. Quinn?
Yes.
Mr. Todd?
Yes.
Mrs. Dahl?
Yes.
Ms. Keller?
Yes.
Mr. Khan?
Yes.
Ms. Shear?
Yes.
Mr. Addison?
Yes.
All right.